Greetings, MechWarriors. This is Blackhawk SC. Today, instead of talking about specific mechs, I'd like to talk about weapon combinations and their synergies that can be used in a variety of different chassis. Since this is a complex topic, I will make a series of videos on the same subject. The way I'll divide it up is by IS and clan tech, and by range. In this video, I will start by explaining the principle behind weapon synergies and go on to talk about the long to mid-range combinations for the inner sphere. For each set of weapons, I'll try to explain why the weapons work together and how to use it. So why do we need to talk about weapon synergies in the first place? Well, let's first go back to the early days of MWO when ghost heat or heat penalties were first introduced. Back then, the problem of big alpha strikes was an even more severe problem than what it is now. If you're in a light, medium, or heavy mech, as soon as you saw a particular mech, say a 6 PPC Stalker, you would be killed or crippled in a single shot. So what was happening there is that the Stalker can stay under cover, minimize exposure time, while positioning at an optimal range. Then from that position, the Stalker is delivering a great deal of damage within a short amount of time. It's a really effective way of winning your matches. But because that playstyle was considered too strong, the game has implemented the ghost heat system, which attempts to reduce the size of the alphas by penalizing the boating of certain weapons or groups of weapons. For example, the game developers determined that the ER large laser and the standard large laser are similar enough and prevented the firing of 4 of any combination of them at the same time. Previously, this value was 3 large lasers. If you did want to boat, the intended effect was to have the weapon boat expose themselves for a longer period of time to deliver their full alpha. This inherently makes alpha striking more risky. For example, in order to avoid ghost heat on the 6 PPC Stalker, one would have to fire 3 groups of 2 PPCs each at half a second apart. This gives enemies a second or so or more to react and shoot back. Another obstacle to boating is that sometimes mechs have different types of hardpoints. For example, only 2 missile hardpoints and a ballistic. It's just that you can neither boat a single ballistic or missile weapon. However, players have found what you can call workarounds for both of these problems by combining weapons that are not linked together in the heat penalty table, or have similar firing characteristics and ranges. In fact, if you go through the quote-unquote popular meta builds, they're usually using one of these weapon combinations on a chassis that's suited for that combination. Similarly, these combinations can also be used on mechs that are not optimized for that playstyle, but are otherwise worse if you use some other weapon combination. To be clear, I don't call weapon combinations like SRMs with large lasers and medium lasers with LRMs synergistic. They're more like backup weapons which are intended to be used in case you get into trouble. These weapons generally don't work simultaneously with your primary weapon system. Let's start off at the longest range, the ER large laser and the gauss rifle at 700 meters plus. We can take a look at my Cataphract 1X as an example. So, I know the torso gauss with an XL engine is controversial, but let's just say I know which matches I want to take it to. Anyways, this combination is intended to engage targets at or past 700 meters. But it can still be quite effective to about 500 meters. Below that range, your weapons will start becoming less heat efficient as compared with mid-range alternatives like the regular large laser. You'll see this combination infrequently in quick play, but more often in CW or faction play and competitive drops where your team can dictate the engagement range. In quick play drops, the map is semi-random, so you may end up getting maps where the range cannot be used very effectively. Normally, you see 3 ER large lasers in a single gauss, or sometimes 2 on the IS side, because the heat penalty of the ER larges start at 4. The gauss rifle is like effectively adding almost 2 more ER large lasers to your alpha without adding any additional heat. It can reach targets at 600 to 800 meters in under half a second, making it fairly accurate at the ER large laser ranges. The intent of this combination is to weaken and possibly kill targets at ranges at which they are unable to return fire, before the fight gets into closer ranges. For example, here on Boreal Vault, you can cover both entrances which are about 1,000 meters out.
Airstrike online. New target acquired. Target destroyed.
So from this position, we're doing nearly full damage to the cicada, and some poke damage to the Centurion just outside the gate. You can also trade against other ranged mechs that have weaker long-range firepower. For example, mechs with only 2 ER large lasers. The Raven 3L comes up as an example. However, if you're taking significant damage from a mech with similar range and firepower, it's best to reposition and find a different target. For example here, if a mech is shooting you, you may want to reposition here. Avoid that fire, and find a different target to shoot. In CW, you must also stick with the team, but maybe a few hundred meters back. Otherwise, you might get pushed on by some brawlers, and your weapons are not effective at short ranges. So for example, if I'm here at Echo 5, I would expect my team to be in the middle of Echo 6 somewhere, maybe around here. Now, if my team moves closer to Echo 7, then I will have to reposition. I can still support them along the way, from targets that are around 700 meters away. So situational awareness is very important when you play these types of long-range mechs. Types of mechs to use with this are larger heavies and assaults due to the weight of the gauss. The quirks you're looking for are energy range, energy heat gen, and ballistic cooldown quirks, because right now the gauss has a pretty ridiculous cooldown time. Energy cooldown and duration quirks are not quite as important. The Cataphract 1X right now has a 20% ballistic cooldown and a 10% energy heat gen quirk, so it's well suited for this combination. A Highlander 732B with its 10% ballistic cooldown quirk and 25% energy range quirk is also another candidate. My recommended modules are radar deprivation, ER large laser range, and gauss cooldown. I think most people will also find the advanced zoom module useful for those longer range shots. Next up is the regular large laser and gauss rifle at 400 to 600 meters. This is very similar to the ER large laser and gauss combination, except it's more suitable for quick play matches, where mid-range is more viable than long range. I'm not going to talk about this too much, except to say that your maximum effectiveness is at the beginning to middle of the match, where the teams are still poking at each other from range. Unlike the ER large laser gauss combination, your large lasers are slightly cooler at the typical engagement ranges of a quick play match. This gives you a bit more DPS than that earlier combination. Here you would replace the advanced zoom module with advanced seismic, and mechs with laser duration and heat gen quirks are preferred over range since more mechs are able to trade with you at that mid-range distance. You want to minimize your face time when enemies are able to shoot back at you. You'll also want some serious gauss and ballistic cooldown quirks, say at 15% or more. Otherwise your DPS suffers dramatically when the brawl starts happening. The Orion Protector Hero mech is suitable for this type of build, with its 25% combined gauss plus ballistic generic cooldown, and 10% laser duration quirk. Until early this month, this is one of the two dominant meta build archetypes, but not so much anymore. You'll still want the large laser range module, as there is no module to improve duration or heat gen. At 300 to 500 meters is the PPC AC-10 or PPC AC-5 combination. Normally you're using 1 to 2 AC-10s or 1 to 3 AC-5s in conjunction with 1 or 2 PPCs. We can take a look at this Banshee 3E as an example. If you look at the PPC by itself, it reaches its ghost heat limit at 2. So any more than 20 points of alpha damage from PPCs alone will give you a massive heat spike. Additionally, PPCs are heat inefficient weapons, so at closer ranges, you don't have the DPS to finish off brawlers who manage to push on you, and even at mid-ranges, 2 PPCs alone doesn't quite do enough damage to trade with, say, a large laser gauss build. ACs, on the other hand, takes many critical slots and are very heavy, so mediums and heavies are unable to boat too many of them, which reduces your alpha strike. You may try to compensate for the weight of ACs by packing lasers, which are lighter weight, and I do this on some builds. They do work, but this issue is that lasers and ACs don't sync beyond short range. That is, you must lead your target with ACs, but you don't lead lasers. So in order to hit a moving target at mid-range, you'll have to fire the two weapons separately. With PPCs, You also need to lead your target, so in combination with the ACs, you'll have a single reticle to point to instead of two. In this example, if the Cataphract 1X is moving towards my left side at full speed, I can put my reticle somewhere over here and try to lead him. As you can see, both the velocity of the AC-5 and the PPC are pretty synced at that range. Another benefit is that both weapons are front-loaded, so you can torso twist or back off into cover as soon as you hit the fire button.
Target destroyed.
As opposed to lasers, you will not have to wait for the laser burn to finish before reversing or shielding yourself. As with other mid-range builds, you'll be doing much of your damage at the early stages of the match, where you'll try to gain favorable trades to weaken up the enemy team before the fight gets closer. The way you want to play this is to either rich peek or corner peek depending on your hardpoint locations. Deliver an alpha strike and come back if the enemy is looking at you. At closer ranges, or if he's not looking at you, stick with the ACs for the most part and avoid firing the PPCs to maximize your DPS.
Target destroyed.
The ideal mechs to put this on are those with ballistic cooldown and energy heatgen quirks. These will give you higher DPS and allow you to alpha more frequently. Secondarily, I would look for PPC velocity and ballistic velocity quirks, which helps to hit targets at longer ranges or faster moving targets. In the Firebrand, for example, the PPC will travel much faster than the AC-5s, so I will only use the PPCs to shoot targets further away and save the alphas for targets that are either slower or a little bit closer. In the Banshee 3E, however, the ballistic and PPC velocities are quite similar, so I can fire them at similar ranges. As for our modules, I would use the Radar Deprivation and Advanced Seismic Sensor module. The PPC cooldown module is very useful for those cases where you have maybe 3 to 4 seconds to get as much damage out as possible. This may allow you to get that second shot off of your PPCs before you have to back up. The AC-5 cooldown module is straight up sustained DPS, so make sure that if you have any weapon module on your build, that you have the AC-5 cooldown. So that is all I want to cover for this video. And watch for more videos within this series coming up in the future. If you like and enjoy these types of videos and find it helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel. And see you next time.